By the early 1990s, Doctor Who was in a bit of a predicament. After several years of low ratings and audiences losing interest in the show had once again started to approach the chopping block. While season 26 saw the show reaching a new low for viewing figures, season 27 saw a slight boost, which was enough to guarantee the show for another season. But this year, things were going to be different. The tides were turning, and a new cast and crew were about to embark on new journeys. With new leads and a new producer at the helm, could Doctor Who be saved from the bottom of the barrel? Season 28 of Doctor Who would have starred Richard Griffiths as the 8th Doctor, along with Julia Ormond as Rain Cunningham, and Mark Greenstreet as new companion Higgs. It would also see Ian Fraser acting as producer, with Ben Aronovich as script editor. This season would have marked a soft refresh for Doctor Who, with it being the debut of a new Doctor and production team. After having worked as a production manager for 5 years, Ian Fraser was approached about taking over as producer, which he eventually agreed to. Fraser and Aronovich wished to take Doctor Who in a new direction. While still retaining a few elements from the McCoy era, both wished to return the show to some of its darker and gothic roots, similar to the Philip Hinchcliffe era. This season would also see the debut of Richard Griffiths as the 8th Doctor. His Doctor would be a throwback to the elder gentleman figure of the 1st Doctor, but with a more modern take. He would often appear as a grumpy old man, but he would be more active in the story like all post-Hartnell Doctors, and would possess the wonder, curiosity and quote-unquote twinkle in the eye quality that the Doctor had always had. The Doctor's costume would also be a return to basics, after over a decade of loud, strange clothing choices with question mark collars. The new Doctor would wear a basic white shirt and red tie, with a black jacket, waistcoat, trousers and shoes. Much like Doctors 3 and 4, it was decided that he would have variants of his costume, such as swapping out the waistcoat for a jumper, as well as changing the colour of his clothing, whilst making sure that the 8th Doctor kept his basic silhouette. Griffiths' Doctor would also be the first to sport glasses, as well as spouting facial hair, with the 8th Doctor initially spouting a goatee. This was due to Griffiths' already existing commitment to the Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. However, Fraser agreed to keep the goatee, as he felt that it complemented the look of his Doctor. One problem that faced the production team with this Doctor was the fact that, with Griffiths being less energetic and mobile, it meant that the action and energetic moments were at risk of taking a back seat. To fix this issue, Fraser and Aronovich devised the plan to introduce a new male companion that could act as the lead and action man in the vein of Ian Chesterton in the Hartnell era. They therefore created the character of Higgs, a soldier from the future, with actor Mark Greenstreet cast in the role. For the new season, a brand new title sequence was commissioned, which was accompanied with a new logo and arrangement of the Doctor Who theme by Mark Ayres. All 3 were designed to move away from the tackiness of those used from the McCoy era, and instead harken back to the core of the show whilst keeping things fresh and original. Side note, I would like to note that, although the titles I present feature Griffiths spouting a beard, which he would do in the show for season 29 onwards, the actual title sequence would see him with only the goatee. The reason he's bearded in the titles is because I couldn't find any good images of Griffiths circa early 90s with a goatee that could work. And yeah, I'm not using AI, fuck that shit. So, I don't know, just fucking imagine he has a goatee in the titles. Season 28 would air between the 4th of September 1991 and the 4th of December 1991. It would consist of 14 episodes across 4 stories, with 2 3-parters and 2 4-parters, and would go out weekly on Wednesday night. This story would be noteworthy for being the first time since An Unearthly Child that a Doctor's first story isn't a post-regeneration story. However, it would be heavily implied that this story is set not too long after the Doctor's regeneration, with Rain appearing to be a little unsure of this new Doctor. The story sees the Doctor and Rain arriving on a mining vessel named the Windshaw. There, the Doctor and Rain are discovered by the crew and arrested, believed to be off-world spies. They're taken to the bridge to face the captain, where, to the Doctor's horror, he finds his assistant to be a Dalek. The Doctor tries to warn the captain about the Dalek, but they think he's mad, saying that the Daleks are their servants, created by their top scientist. He's then taken to meet this scientist, who who the Doctor discovers is none other than Davros. The Doctor then tries warning the crew about Davros, but is unable to convince them. After trying to attack a Dalek, the Doctor and Rain are thrown into the brig. There they meet a prisoner named Higgs. Speaking to Higgs, the Doctor and Rain learn that he is a soldier from a Dalek war in the future. However, his craft got shot through a wormhole and was sent back in time by 200 years. Tracking Dalek life signs to the mining vessel, he too tried to warn the crew of the Daleks. However, they also didn't believe him and locked him away for trying to kill Davros. With Higgs agreeing to team up with the Doctor and Rain to stop whatever Davros has planned, the trio work together to overpower the local security and break out of the brig. They then learn about a sector of the vessel that's closed off for unknown reasons. Suspecting that Davros occupies that sector, the trio sneak their way past security and make their way to the outer bound sector. There, they discover a Dalek processing factory, where several crew members have been hypnotized by Davros and forced into labor. They see the crew members growing new Dalek mutants by combining old Kala DNA with specks of rock from a recently mined stone. The new mutants are then placed into new Dalek casings, where they await for Davros' order to conquer the vessel. With viable evidence that Davros is evil, the Doctor proceeds to unhypnotize one of the workers. The trio then take the worker to the captain, where the worker warns the captain about Davros. With viable evidence against Davros, he makes an announcement to the crew that Davros and his Daleks are considered hostile and dangerous. Realizing that his plans have been exposed, Davros activates his Daleks and orders them to kill the crew. We then see the new Daleks rolling out into the corridors and picking the crew off one by one. We then see the Doctor, Rain, Higgs, the unhypnotized crew member, and the captain working together to try and stop Davros. Searching the vessel's logs for anything that could help, the Doctor discovers that one of the recently gathered asteroids on the vessel contained an element named Varganium, which can be turned into a gas that's deadly to life forms from Skaro. With that, the group travel to the nearest laboratory, where they begin to crush down the Varganium into its gas components. The Doctor makes contact with Davros over a communications channel. The Doctor gives Davros an ultimatum: stand down or else he will die. Davros laughs disgustingly before telling the Doctor that his threats are empty. The Doctor then tells Davros that he did warn him, he gave him a chance, before telling Rain to activate the ventilation. Rain flicks a switch and we see the gas being pumped into the ventilation. We see Daleks beginning to spew out green liquid as they spin around frantically. We then see Davros also coughing up green liquid, demanding the Doctor to tell him what he's done. The Doctor reveals his plan before saying, "Goodbye, Davros," and hopefully for the last time, before switching off the television. We then cut back to Davros, who slowly makes his way to an escape pod. Davros, with the last of his energy, presses the main button, which shuts the door and launches the escape pod. We then cut later with the Daleks being ejected into a nearby sun. The captain thanks the Doctor, Rain and Higgs for their help and pardons them of their crimes. We then end with the Doctor and Rain back in the TARDIS, with the Doctor polishing his glasses and Rain admitting that she's starting to get used to this new Doctor. Before the Doctor dematerializes the TARDIS, he hears a knock at the door. He opens the door and shouts, "Enter." Higgs enters the TARDIS and says his goodbyes to the Doctor and Rain, with the latter sharing a hug with him. The Doctor also thanks Higgs for his assistance, before asking what he plans to do now. Higgs says he's not too sure, and that he's worried that if he stays in the past he'll somehow break the timeline. The Doctor then reveals that the TARDIS is a time machine and offers to take Higgs back to his time, before saying, "Or you could come with us, have a guided tour around the universe and then back home." After some consideration, Higgs accepts his offer, which pleases the Doctor and Rain. The Doctor proceeds to set the TARDIS into flight and we see it dematerializing from the mining vessel. This story sees the Doctor, Rain and Higgs arriving in the forest at night during a rainstorm, where they're offered shelter by a group of academics in their mansion. There we're introduced to the supporting cast of this story, including Major Dickens, the leader of the group, a bear named Bartholomew, Sue, a seemingly troubled housemaid who prefers to communicate through a stuffed rabbit named Happy, as well as O'Neill, a doctor in English literature, the Deacon, a chaplain of the British Army, and Joe Hartley, a taxidermist. At first everything seems normal, however things take a turn for the worst as the group of academics are slowly being killed off by a murderer within the group. The Doctor is forced to investigate the murders, however during his investigation he uncovers a device named the Bartholomew Transactor. Confronting the remaining academics, the Doctor discovers that the group are experimenting with time with the Bartholomew Transactor in order to send a message back in time to their past selves to warn them about a girl named Edie O'Neill who, several years ago, they misdiagnosed with Gravelax poisoning and accidentally killed her in this very house. Their plan works and they're successfully able to communicate with their younger selves. However, the interference with the timeline causes Edie to be transformed into a zombie-like state of limbo. This causes the Doctor to realise that the misdiagnosis had never been genuine, and that the whole series of events were part of a time experiment conducted by Major Dickens, as he wanted to be famous for bringing somebody back to life. Intending to correct the academic's mistake, the Doctor travels back in time to undo the damage and expose Dickens. However, he is unable to bring himself to kill Edie, and continues to allow the zombie Edie to exist in the present. Then, returning to the present, the Doctor discovers that most of the academics, bar O'Neill and Sue, are now all dead. The Doctor also notices that Edie's body is collapsed. He then theorises that the zombie Edie was responsible for the deaths and was keeping herself quote-unquote alive through her own use of the transactor. We then end with O'Neill and Sue heading off together before the trio also leave. This story would have been set in London in 1940, where we see the Doctor, Rain and Higgs meeting a private detective named Cody McBride. The trio work with him to track down a serial killer known as the Limehouse Lurker. After some investigation, the Doctor discovers a Cybermat, which leads him to suspect that the Limehouse Lurker is a time-travelling Cyberman that has been damaged by a bomb from the Blitz, and is seeking blood plasma to heal its damaged components. Whilst the Doctor and Higgs tinker with the Cybermat, as this Cybermat is a design that the Doctor has never seen before, Rain and McBride investigate the factory of Dr. Pettler, a murdered businessman, where they discover a small group of Cybermen who go after the two of them. The two of them split up and we see Rain being pursued by the Cybermen. She then takes shelter in the bar, however she's attacked by a swarm of Cybermats, which she's able to fend off, before she takes shelter in a house belonging to a politician named George Lim. This would be intercut with the Doctor, Higgs and McBride continuing to investigate, where they eventually discover that the factory is being used to create Cybermen and Cybermats. They also discover that Wall, Dr. Pettler's assistant, has partially converted himself into a Cyberman. It turns out that Pettler and Wall found a group of dormant Cybermen and began research into them at the factory, but Pettler became horrified when he discovered the Cybermen's true nature, and so he was killed by a Cybermat. We also learn that it was the murder of Pettler that McBride was investigating. Meanwhile, Rain discovers that Lim has been sheltering the Lurker before it attacks her. Then suddenly, Captain Hartman, a Nazi officer, turns up and destroys the Lurker while also kidnapping Rain and takes her to his Nazi base in Jersey. It's here that George Lim is revealed to be the mastermind of the cyber operation, having given cyber technology to both the British and Nazis to kickstart a technology race. We then see the Doctor recover the Lurker's Cyber Command Unit, a mobile computer that directs the Cybermen. He then travels to Jersey and uses the command unit to seize control of the Cybermen and sets them against Lim and his Nazi allies. A Nazi captain damages the control unit and all hell breaks loose, as the Cybermen can no longer be controlled. Lim escapes the area using the Cybermen's time capsule, however the primitive device can't cope and time is slowed down. The Doctor and Higgs are then able to resist the effect and pull Rain free. The trio are able to escape the factory, with the cyber control unit exploding and destroying the factory. The Doctor assumes Lim to have been shredded through time and space, before the trio leave in the TARDIS. This story sees the TARDIS arriving in an old cavernous house filled with giant furniture. Upon arriving, the Doctor is struck with a sense of dread and is unnerved, seemingly knowing exactly where he is. Meanwhile, we see Rain experiencing visions. Visions which we see involve a familiar white-haired man killing another man. Exploring the house some more, the group discovers a man who the Doctor instantly recognises. He then reveals to Rain and Higgs that he is home, Gallifrey, the House of Lungbarrow, home to his family, his cousins, identifying this man as his cousin Glospin, who is never like the Doctor. Exploring more of the house, the Doctor encounters more of his cousins, including Inniset, a friend-turned-enemy, Cephalorope, the current housekeeper of Lungbarrow, and Ois, who the Doctor seems uncomfortable around. Upon seeing the Doctor, Cephalorope tries to have the Doctor captured by the Drudges, giant wooden-like creatures who serve the house's occupants. It turns out that the visions Rain has experienced was an event from Gallifrey's past, 637 years ago, where the first Doctor killed a man named Quensis, something which the Doctor claims to be untrue. We learn that Quensis was once the head of the family of the House of Lungbarrow, and was something of a father figure for the Doctor. However, Quensis was eventually forced to banish the Doctor from the house as he refused to enter politics. The story would then see the Doctor, Rain and Higgs working with Inniset, as well as the Doctor's old robotic friend named Badger, to try and clear the Doctor's name, as well as find the real murderer and deal with Rain's visions. The latter is eventually explained to be the Doctor's subconsciousness being rerouted by the TARDIS to Rain, as the Doctor's mind can no longer contain all of his memories. Attempting to clear the Doctor's name, Inniset telepathically connects with Rain in order to access his memories. There she sees that the first Doctor did indeed kill Quensis. However, she also sees that the Doctor was also somewhere else on Gallifrey at the same time. As the group continues to investigate, we do naturally learn a bit more about the House of Lungbarrow, as well as some of Gallifrey's history. We learn that, after the Doctor was banished, the Doctor's cousins illegally loomed another cousin named Ois, which resulted in Lungbarrow being disavowed from the Prydonian chapter and slowly dragging itself off the cliff it stood on, the house itself being sentient. It's also explained that Time Lords aren't born, but are created by devices known as looms, with everybody in the house being cousins to each other. We'd also learn a bit about the creator of the House of Lungbarrow, one of Gallifrey's founding fathers, alongside Rassilon and Omega, known as the Other. It's revealed that he threw himself into the prime distributor of the looms, with his entire DNA and genetic code being torn apart and unravelled to await his eventual reconstruction. And whilst it's never confirmed, we see hints that the Doctor may or may not be connected to the Other in some way. After overcoming some difficulties, such as the Doctor nearly dying, helping Rain before she is driven insane, Badger accidentally killing Inniset, resulting in her regenerating, and encountering an experiment gone wrong left by the Doctor over 637 years ago, it's eventually revealed that the real killer was actually Glospin. It turns out Glospin forced himself to regenerate into looking exactly like the first Doctor in order to frame him for murder. We learn that Glospin killed Quensis before he could reveal his will, which he predicted would name the Doctor as his successor as the head of the family. It's also revealed that Quensis actually transferred his mind into Badger, revealing that his murder had been foretold. He also reveals that he did indeed plan to name the Doctor as his successor. The story then ends with the house beginning to collapse over a cliff. Inniset and Badger escape the house, while the Doctor, Rain and Higgs escape in the TARDIS, with Glospin and Cephalorope being left behind as they plummet to their death. The story then ends in a Gallifreyan city, with the Doctor giving the house keys and loom data to Inniset and proclaiming her as the new housekeeper. Inniset tells the Doctor that the Lord President has promised that Lungbarrow will be reinstated as a Prydonian house, and that a new house will be grown from the original template. Season 28 was overall better received than the past few seasons. Viewing figures, while still not reaching the heights they used to be, were noticeably more healthier than they had been in more recent years. Although Lungbarrow was a hard pill for casual viewers to swallow, it went down pretty well with the diehards, with most casual viewers liking the rest of the season though. Griffiths' Doctor, Rain and Higgs proved to be popular with fans and casual viewers who tuned in to see the new Doctor in action. It was generally agreed that the new direction the show was heading down was the right call. and seeing the success in the new production team, the BBC higher-ups decided to greenlight the show for another season in 1992.